Hello, good evening, and welcome everyone to the Women's webinar. This is the first in the series of women's events and a curtain raiser to our upcoming conference, Fit and Fantastic. So today we are going to talk about stress management among South Asian women in the US. If you are a working woman, if you have a family, you know how hard it is to satisfy multiple commitments and still keep on a smiling face. And women run the world, they rule the world, but still we make it seem so effortless because we handle a lot of stress. And as immigrants, we face higher levels of stress, which I think Dr. Ruchi and Dr. Leena are very competent in this field. They're going to go in a lot of depth and cover all these aspects. But before that, let me give you a couple of quick announcements. This particular webinar is a curtain raiser for our conference on November 17th. This is the Women's Wellness Conference. It's called Fit and Fantastic. I urge all women to attend this. We are going to cover a lot of issues here, starting with anger management, how to handle child's psychology, what do you do with relationships, how do women manage depression, anxiety, fatigue, and there are several other concepts covered, managing cancer, emerging health technologies. So please register for that. You do get a discount, the 20% discount, the first 20 registrants. With that, I would like to get started with the conference today. We have two very accomplished speakers here, Dr. Leena and Dr. Ruchi. Dr. Leena is an adult, adolescent, and child psychiatrist. She also is the founder of the Tarika Foundation. And Dr. Ruchi Puri is a holistic women's health expert. And you can learn more about them on the websites which we have shared on the screen. With that, I want to start off, but before that, a quick request. If you have any questions through the course of the webinar, there is a chat box which is available to you. Please type your questions there. Dr. Leena and Dr. Ruchi will take a look at that, and at a suitable time, we will choose the most common concern the audience are having, and we will answer the questions for you. With that, over to our speakers. Start with Dr. Leena. Yeah.
So Dr. Ruchi is going to go first.
Oh, sorry, Dr. Ruchi. Sorry about that. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to put the slide down, Vidyangi?
Yeah. 1 second. Sorry. Yeah. Is this fine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Ruchi Puri. I'm an obstetrician gynecologist and with additional training in alternative modalities of healing such as Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine. I'm trauma informed as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this evening. And I wanted to give everybody a chance to maybe just take a deep breath and land just in your seat. I imagine many of you are just rushing to get home. You haven't had dinner yet, and you've had numerous stressful triggers during the course of your day to just be here. So if everyone wants to just take a deep breath in and just be here with us, that would be great. So we're living in a very fast-paced world these days, and stress is everywhere. If it's not coming from our professional lives, there are still family demands, and then just beyond that are constant stressful stimulus that we receive every day during our news, email, social media, and there's a lot going on in the world today. We all know that our politics, the environment, the state of the economy, our futures are things that we're also kind of holding in the background of our day-to-day experience. And since we have a 24/7 access to information because of our present day technology, I think there's a way in which we have a basal bombardment of stress all of the time. And I think one thing for us to all be clear is that all stressors have one thing in common. Stress, things become stressful when they trigger a sense of scarcity, or feeling not enoughness within us. So maybe that's not enough time, not enough money, not enough sleep, not enough fun, maybe not being smart enough to get through a challenge, not enough time to just rest and digest. And like that, stress becomes a universal experience to everyone across every age. So what stress looks like for us when we're young students and we're trying to pass our exams doesn't seem to change when we enter the professional life, certainly doesn't change in our middle age life where we have families to care for, whether they're our own partners and children or aging parents. And then certainly later on at the latter stage of our retirement life, I think there's still a sense of stress to make sure that everybody is okay and that life is moving with some sense of peace. So I think there's never a time in our lives when we don't have to deal with the issue of stress. And I think because we are experiencing so many stressful triggers all the time across every age, we begin to think that stress is normal. And I want to first ask this question: how many of you are really feeling like stress is just a normal part of life and there's nothing to be done about it? And imagining a lot of you being like, yeah, of course it is. That's such a silly question to ask. And
I would agree with that, Ruchi.
yeah, and I think this is the opportunity for us to have a bit of a reality check, because when we're living in chronic state of stress, it isn't healthy. But then the question also to me becomes, how did we get used to such a chronic state of stress if it wasn't healthy? And I think this is where we have this amazing human capacity to adapt. And human beings are still on the earth. Our human survival has hinged on this capacity to learn how to adapt to stress. And this is how our humanity has endured famines and wars and disasters and made it through so many traumatic events and still lives today. And there's a lot of amazing intelligence in that adaptation capacity, but it also, I think, in the way that we've learned to just move forward and survive, we also haven't learned to take care of our stress. And this is really the crux of the conversation that we're going to have today. And it begins with this understanding of like, well, if I'm so used to stress, what happens to me health-wise? And without spending too much time getting into the medical literature, just to say that, you know, medicine has been studying stress as early back as the 1930s. There's a well-documented and understanding of how the physiology of stress in our physical bodies lead to multiple medical illnesses. And that's probably the slide you're currently seeing right now on the screen, are all these chronic health conditions where stress can be an integral component. And then let's say you're relatively young and healthy and that these are not the things that have caught up with you. When we go to the next slide, you might see a bunch of symptoms that you are experiencing that can easily be traced back to your experience of stress. And I think these are the things that we're seeing more and more all the time around rashes and abdominal pain and forgetfulness and maybe coping mechanisms that have unhealthy consequence for us, that these things come because we're so chronically stressed. And so that's the, you know, that's the exploration that we're going to have today, that how do we break this conditioned experience of stress? And even if those of you are sitting in your chairs and you're like, you know, maybe none of this is really going on for me, I bet there are many of us in the audience today that feel like, you know, plop in my bed at night and I just feel like I'm a hamster spinning on a wheel over and over again, and that I don't have a choice and I don't know how to get off the wheel. And so if that's your experience, then I would definitely encourage you to keep stay listening with us. And you know, Lena, I know you and I have shared our own personal stories with stress, and I think yours is really remarkable because your own personal story was a deeper invitation in making some very important life changes so that you could be happy. And I'd love to invite you to share your story of stress with us this evening now.
Thank you, Ruchi. Thank you, everyone, for taking time from your busy evening routine to be here with us. You know, this topic is certainly the kind of the need of the hour from my perspective, and I'm so glad that I'm able to share my perspective about it. So, you know, we'll come to the slide you're seeing, but really quick, I think my life story kind of fits really well with this definition of stress that you're looking at. Stress is equal to pressure divided by resilience. And it goes back to almost 20 years ago when I was a newly immigrated woman, a South Asian woman who came here because I got married to my husband and had like a lot of aspiration for career to, you know, specialize in psychiatry, child psychiatry. And so, you know, that happened, thankfully. And so it, you know, just got more and more stressful as I started working. And, you know, on an average, you work about 80, 90 hours per week as a resident. And during those years, I also had my child, my daughter, who's now 13 years old. And, you know, the demands, like I think Ruchi earlier mentioned the hamster on the wheel analogy. I think that really fitted very, very well for me at that time. I was, you know, trying to meet the demands of the patients at work, demands at home, as a wife, as a mom, not that much social support as an immigrant in this country, not that much family support as much one would have in their own country, you know, coming from you know, various parts of Southeast Asia. And it was, you know, I was kind of thinking, yeah, this is what I need to do. I just need to keep fulfilling all the demands. And the priority for me was work was first, then came my family, and then I was at the last, at the end is me. So everything was like, that needs to be done first, and then I come towards the end. And of course, you know, I kind of realized that's not the right priority, and that the order is kind of not how it should be. And that came to me in a very adverse way. Towards the end of my fellowship training at Stanford, I was actually, unfortunately, or I actually look back at it and say, fortunately, diagnosed with tuberculosis of lung. And whether it was just some of the stuff I had caught because I'd been working with patients all this time, or I'd carried it with me all along from India, being medical, you know, being trained medically there, or had medical school training there. It, you know, is known that that type of illness really comes up when your immune system is down. So we all maybe have that bacteria in our systems dormant, not active yet. But when your immune system, when your stress levels, like the stuff that Ruchi was talking about, chronic build of stress can lead to lots of physical symptoms and emotional symptoms. And I think that was kind of my wake-up call. When I was, you know, forced to go into social isolation, kind of the practice this country follows, which is totally understandable. We don't want to spread this disease to other people. So I was forced to actually go into this timeout, as you may kind of maybe even think about it as, and I had to do some introspection and think about what is going on. What changes do I need to bring in my lifestyle so I don't end up having chronic diseases like this again? And that was my, you know, turning point, if you will. And that pause that I had to make and do some introspection really helped me understand that the priority or the order of taking care of us in different roles should be first take care of yourself, then comes family, and then comes work. And unfortunately, all of us are, are not able to do that, or have this wrong kind of notion that the order should be other way around. But I kind of learned my lesson at that time. And so if you look at this definition of stress, the pressures were building for me. I was getting pressured from everywhere, playing different roles. And the resilience, and let's talk about what builds your resilience. The resilience factors are, I mean, American Psychological Association actually defines resilience as a process of adapting well to adversity, just like Ruchi was mentioning, how as a human race, we have gone through so much adversity evolutionarily and adapted to different kinds of stress. So process of adapting through different kinds of challenges, adversities, health problems, and work-related problems, whatnot. And what is well known to help with building resilience in terms of research, not just me saying it, is that we need to focus on getting good quality and quantity of sleep, good nutrition, physical exercise. So there is a lot of emphasis on just like exercise for the body, but there is very little understood or known about that our mind also needs an exercise. A mind that really works for us 24/7 almost, even in our sleep, our subconscious mind is active. And so we need to really spare time to give that mind a rest. And so not just exercise for the body, but exercise for the mind. And actually, Vidyangi, the next slide would be perfect for this particular topic. And then, free fun time with family and friends, relaxation, it could be different for different people, whether it is just sitting and breathing and relaxing, whether it is relaxation in the form of taking a walk in the garden or park, or going for a hike, listening to calming music. It could be different for different people. It could be art for somebody. And then interestingly, there's a lot of new research about practicing gratitude and compassion. Lately, that's been telling us that that's a really good way to build your resilience. And I feel like our modern lives have taken that away from us. And then, like I said, the exercise for mind, meditation in whichever shape or form that appeals to you. The one that seemed to really resonate well with me was mindfulness meditation, and we'll get into that in a bit.
Yeah. Lena, thanks so much for sharing your story. I think there are a couple of things that are real highlight some important take-home points that I want to bring a little bit of attention to for our audience this evening. I was struck by, I think, something that also happens for me. I know that you immigrated here some 15 years. I was born in the United States, and I think regardless of where we're coming from, there's some cultural norms that are deeply ingrained in how we as Indian women approach life. And the first thing that was really strong for me was this pressure to succeed with very little support. Like, I get that for many women, I certainly saw this with my mom's generation, that everything kind of falls on the woman's shoulder in the household in terms of making sure that the family is okay, that we're going forward in our professional lives, that we're just taking care of everything, and that we have a sense that we need to do this. At least for me, I noticed that there's always a bit of like, I don't want to bother anybody, and even a sense of shame that I should be able to take care of it myself, that this is what my mother did, and I should be strong to manage it on my own. And I think this inability, or not inability, but this challenge around opening up and sharing the difficulties that we're experiencing, that sometimes life is not always perfect. Being able to open up without feeling like we're burdening others, and also not being judged, and asking for help are some of the really key challenges that we face as Southeast Asian women. And all of these things to me kind of boil down to something essential, which is this idea that I can self-sacrifice to keep up. That if I give up my sleep tonight, then I'll do better on my test or get my work done for the morning. Or if I like skip a meal today, or if I don't take care of going and getting exercise, that all these different ways we try to trim off the edges of our own well-being eventually add up. And then what you said about this next thing around the very thing that you were afraid of, and I think where this has happened to me as well, the very thing I'm trying to avoid becomes my reality. So the thing I fear becomes the thing that happens. And in a lot of ways, it's not a bad thing. And I think this is ultimately where the rubber meets the road for many of us, that the thing we're trying to avoid invites us into the opportunity to course correct and shift our lives. And in your case, it was like forced isolation, which I don't think I would wish on everybody. But that sometimes that when we do get sick, we realize that we need to innovate a new way in how we show up in our lives that includes us, that we can't just do it for everyone.
Right. And Ruchi, the very reason we are doing this today is because we don't want other women to get to that point and then realize it, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because,
And you
you know,
and I have both been there.
the cultural kind of, I think, whether it is a cultural mindset, it is like, keep going on, be tough and be hard on yourself until you fall apart.
Yeah.
But that's not what, we want others to, experience. I mean, what I went through, I look back and look at as that was a turning point, something great came out of it, but that was a horrible experience. And so it is important to learn to manage stress, so you don't get to that point where you are at the tipping point and you're, having to then look back and say, oh, I could have done this 10 years ago.
Yeah. And I think what we're going to now step into is like this idea that it's something to be even managed. That I think that what you and I both learned is what's the process awareness or how to of self-care, that all of a sudden things that appear to be stressful, that how do we transform them so it's not a managing, but that we start living our lives in a way that supports us to even show up to some of these stressful triggers without experiencing them to be stressful. And I think this is where we can just dive into what it means around being mindful, and the idea that when we're in a very stressed state, that we're more likely to react to situations instead of slowing down, gaining the space so that we can respond to situations. So maybe we can just pick up there.
That sounds great. I think I'm ready to talk about mindfulness, a topic that's very dear to my heart. Not that I'm saying this because it is something I have learned a lot about through research and my work, but it is something I practice and I've seen a big difference in my life. So,
Dr. Leena, do you want me to go back to the slides, or you just want to start the practice?
No, we can maybe just take a minute and go to the being mindful slide that's next.
Oh, the next one. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vidyangi. So, what is mindfulness? We've heard this buzzword a lot about the last at least 2-3 years. There's been a lot of like, practice mindfulness, be mindful, and the word itself kind of makes a lot of sense. But what it is and how you can do it in your day-to-day life is a question, right? And so, mindfulness to simplify, is just being in the moment, in the here and now. And, there are other, aspects to it. Once you're able to be here and now, it allows you to take a step back. And if you can add to that, being kind and curious about what's happening right now, non-judgmentally, you can actually choose your behavior or your response. So, how is it done? You are able to do that using your breath as an anchor, noticing your breath, noticing the sensations in your body, your thoughts and feelings, being compassionate to self and others. So that's when the kindness comes in. And, why do we need to do this? Because we want to be able to choose a response versus react. And what we are learning is that a lot of us, in the moment of a situational stress, we get, triggered by that. Our emotions follow. Our emotions actually just skyrocket. And when our emotions are at 10 out of 10, the emotional part of our brain hijacks the logical part of our brain, which is the frontal lobe, which helps us to problem solve, which helps us to figure out what could be another way to deal with this. And so you are actually caught up in that cycle of, getting so upset or angry or sad that it takes over your ability to actually, choose a better behavior or response than just to react. And that's where mindfulness comes in. So if I am able to take a step back, and if I'm able to watch my thoughts and feelings and emotions as they are building up, and I'm able to then look at the full big picture, non-judgmentally, being compassionate to self and others, I can actually look at the array of different options and responses I can choose, and that's what helps to have, less of stress and anxiety and depression. So as you see in this slide, response is when, when we are actually able to see what I was thinking, what I was feeling, because we know that it has been proven through research that the way we think affects the way we feel, and the way we feel affects the way we behave. So if we are able to keep track of our thoughts and feelings, then we can actually modulate our behavior or our response. And if we are, like I said earlier, not doing that, we are directly jumping to being caught up in the emotion, then we are going to react. Mindfulness helps you build that awareness, that I can start first building that awareness through being aware of my breath, my body. And then we are training our attention muscle to get stronger as we are practicing first steps of mindfulness by paying attention to breath and body senses. And then as we are able to build that awareness stronger, you are able to actually see what you're thinking and feeling, which then allows you to choose a response. Does that make sense to you, Ruchi?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And in fact, I think we should let our audience have a taste this evening of what the power of a mindfulness practice can have in terms of being able to cultivate some self-contact with our inner experience. And so it just, invite everybody, if they're distracted and doing other things, to maybe just take a moment to sit down and go on a ride with us into a mindfulness experience.
Well, I'll be delighted to walk you guys through a small practice. I would, request everyone who's joined us, again, thank you for being here for this evening, to find a comfortable position and just follow some of the guidance I'm going to give through the steps of following mindfulness exercise. I'm going to start with ringing the tone bar, or my little sound bowl here. And that often is a nice way to ground yourself, bring yourself in the moment, and then I'll be walking you through the exercise. So everyone is ready? Here we go. For the next few minutes, I invite you to rest. Give it a rest. All of it. Your work, your responsibilities, the gossip in the family, your inner gossip, and the next new thing. Let everything be exactly the way it is, and rest. Let your body rest. Sit in a comfortable position. If you feel comfortable, allow your eyes to close. If not, focus your eyes on an easy spot about a foot in front of you. Feel your body supported by a chair, the couch, or the floor. If your arms or legs are crossed, then uncross them. Find a position that lets you feel at ease and allow the muscles in your body and your face to soften. Maybe even let out a long, slow sigh after a busy, long day and come to this present moment. Now let your attention rest on the breath. Feel the natural rhythm of your breath. It may help if you want to put your hand on your belly. Breathing naturally, feeling the belly expand with each in-breath and release with each out-breath. Focusing your attention on the breath and allowing everything else to fade into the background. Breathing and resting, resting and breathing. Feel the breath from the very beginning all the way through where the breath is still, just for a moment. And the out breath from the very beginning all the way through, the breath is still again. Now see if you can rest your attention in this little space between your in-breath and out-breath, and out-breath and in-breath. This little space is your still, quiet place. Breathing and resting in the stillness and quietness. And when your attention wanders, which it may and will, gently bring it back to your breath and continue to rest in your still, quiet place. You're making this conscious choice to choose to rest, to choose to focus on your breath, allowing things to be just as they are, allowing yourself to be just as you are, nothing to change or to fix or improve. All you need to do now is breathing and resting, resting and breathing. When you spend your time in the still, quiet place, it allows you to watch your thoughts, meet with your feelings, check in with your feelings. What do they want at this moment? Some feelings want just to be the way they are, just befriend them. Some feelings want you to do something about them. Noticing that the feelings are asking you to be more aware of the emotions and how you can ride that wave by catching it before it starts to go too high. And as you do that, you are able to see a way to solve the conflict that might be driving this feeling or emotion. As this practice session comes to a close, you may want to remember that in our fast-paced, media-driven world, resting is a radical act. But with practice, you can learn to breathe and rest anytime, anywhere, even when you're brushing your teeth, putting your shoes on, struggling at work, or hanging out with your friends, or even arguing with someone. This kind of resting is especially helpful when you are nervous, depressed, bored, or angry. Remember, the still, quiet place is always inside of you. All you need to do is follow your breath and rest in the stillness and quietness for a few minutes, and then come back to what you need to do. In a moment, I'm going to ring the tone bar again. And when you no longer can hear the sound waves produced by the tone bar, gently open your eyes and bring your awareness back into where you are.
Thank you, Leah. That was just a really lovely way to land into our moment together now. And I hope everyone had a chance of what it means to come into presence. We all have an inner and outer experience, and in the rapid pace of moving through our day to day, I'd say most of us are quite engaged in what's happening around us, and then lose complete awareness of what's happening within us. And this practice of mindfulness becomes a restoration in an inner awareness of our thoughts, our emotions, our physical sensations, and also deeply our sense of self. And in a mindfulness or presence practice, that we come back to honoring, like, just taking some space for ourselves. Sometimes that's physical space, quiet space, that we find we take some time to rest and digest and process what's maybe happened during the course of the day, and return into a slower rhythm. I think many of us are pulled out into a rapid rhythm that takes us out of our natural pace in life. It's if you're used to going, really your natural rhythm is 10 miles per hour, and life has got you running at 25 miles per hour. That extra 15 miles takes its tone on us. And I think the other thing is that at the end of the day, there's no pill or there's no surgery for stress. But if we don't find a way to relax, to rest, digest, to cope with our stress, then we are going to be living lives codependent on surgery and maybe pills down the road. And so I think that this practice of coming into stillness and quiet is a total game changer if we're going to move through our lives in an embodied or grounded way. And so thank you so much for just giving us a taste of that.
Thank you, Ruchi. Well, let's open the door for the participants to share their experience about how the mindfulness exercise was. Like Vidyangi mentioned, people who are with us, please feel free to type in your questions in the chat box, and she will be moderating the questions. And then we will, close in another few minutes, talk more about our upcoming conference.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Leena, Dr. Ruchi. So yeah, all attendees, thank you for staying with us through the practice and supporting us. This is a burning problem. Most people are facing chronic illnesses because they're unable to manage stress. And I think this is the right time for you to ask questions. If you looked at earlier part of the discussion, there are so many ways stress can manifest. I think there were at least 30 to 40 symptoms. It can start with as simple as migraine or itching or eczema. I mean, I don't know how many other forms it will manifest. So if you have questions about the practice which happened right now, or about any of the slides, we can go back and we can take questions. Please type your questions in the chat box and I can read them out. There is also a Q&A box, and I think I'm going to read questions from there. So the first question here is for Dr. Leena. Dr. Leena, what is the right age for children to start mindfulness meditation?
So that's a very good question. Actually, the mindfulness training I attended was for the whole age group, starting from 3 years old to adults. So there are some very simple, quick, fun ways of doing mindfulness with your children. You can even use their soft toy or their teddy bear and say, okay, let's have your teddy breathe a few times. And it could start with even, that kind of a fun way. They are into, different pebbles or gems sometimes fascinate that age group. So you can also say, okay, let's put a little gem on your belly and let's breathe for 5 times. So it's actually something we can inculcate in our kids as early as age 3 is what we know.
Awesome. Wow, such a creative way of doing meditation. So looks like meditation as a word, it can be understood in different ways. You don't have to really sit down and be quiet, but in your daily activities, like you're doing with children, meditation can be looked at in different ways. So
That's right.
that's really enlightening. So, Dr. Ruchi, we have another question for you here. What are a few ways in which this particular practice of mindfulness can subdue chronic illnesses, or does it subdue them? Is there any relationship?
Yeah, I think that there's a way in which we need to start changing our relationship of how we understand chronic illnesses, that they're not something that come to us like a flash of lightning that just, electrocuted you while you were walking down the street, that part of the environment that we create for ourselves then becomes the predisposing contributors to the chronic illnesses that we face. So I think already, like, the ways in which mindfulness practice helps us is to, one, slow down and become more introspective, that we can, in that stillness, even if there isn't a mental quiet, that we can see how our thoughts are racing. Like, is it racing towards food? Either like, I want my chocolate cake. Is it racing towards, I haven't eaten, I'm starving? What are the ways in which our thoughts are spinning? And that we come into a witnessing of our internal experience, and that we discover, like, oh, I'm numb around food, or I'm afraid at my job that I shouldn't make a mistake. What is my internal experience as I move through my life? Am I biting my tongue instead of saying what I need to say, and then I lose my sense of space in my relationships? That each one of these things, whether it's food or exercise or being able to be myself in my life and speak my truth, that we don't, if we're moving too fast, that we don't recognize these habits and patterns that we've fallen into. But by, even if we don't go of a quote unquote meditation practice, but we take the opportunity to just sit in stillness and witness what's happening on inside of us, that already this can be the catalyst to making better lifestyle choices that then change our environment and then turn the tide on our experience of our chronic illness, which a lot of things with, like, high blood pressure, diabetes, these things can already be greatly influenced by lifestyle changes. And the challenge for many patients is, like, how do I do that? That they don't see a way forward. And I think this is where this practice becomes very powerful.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ruchi. We have two questions. I'll read the first one. It is from Nareen Bakshi. It says, is there a test of some type for doctors to know the level of chronic stress someone has? Can we measure that kind of stress?
Ruchi, why don't you take a stab at it, and then I will also chime in.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is an interesting thing that we're facing in the modern day medical practice, that because we don't have enough time with our doctors in the office, this conversation around stress doesn't happen, because the doctor's stressed, the patient's stressed, you have 15 minutes to have a conversation. And so I think there aren't these standard algorithms or screening measures that are in place in our preventative care routine. And I think it also goes back to the fact that stress is such a ubiquitous experience in life that we've normalized it. And we think that because everyone deals with it all the time, that it's just the way it is. And that's just not true. And I'm sure for academic purposes that there are stress measures and indicators and written things that people can do to quantify it. And I don't think that that's part of mainstream practice as well.
Okay, Dr. Lee.
Right. I would just add to that and say that, as far as field of psychiatry goes and depression and how there was a lot of research into what really happens in our body when you're going through depression. There was this research on measuring your cortisol levels, and that's a measure of it's one of the stress hormones. So it did give us some indication about that those levels are elevated when you're under chronic stress, but it's not something that has translated into doing as a routine test day to day to measure that, because it can be elevated because of various different things physiologically as well.
Okay, so those are great answers. We have one more follow-up question. Won't such calmness make me less ambitious? Being slowing down completely and not being reactive about things. When yeah, I think it's a valid question. We're in
Yeah,
Silicon Valley.
I think that's the general kind of fear, you may call it, that people may have about adapting mindfulness or meditation in their day-to-day life, because you worry about, like, will I just be too calm or too subdued and I will kind of lose interest and go away from the world that really needs my attention. That's really not what we know. What we know is that, and I can tell this from my own experience because I practice it, that it actually helps you gain more clarity in your thinking. It actually helps you think about what you really want to do, and create more ambition. And with the clarity in your thinking, with the calmness and control over your thinking to a certain extent, which can come, of course, with a lot of practice, you are actually more efficient, more productive, and you can actually achieve your ambitions. That's certainly been proven through research studies also, that this calmness is really proven to be making you more productive than being less productive.
Okay, I think that answers the question. We have another question in the Q&A. What does it do to the crime rate we are facing in among the teens? How can you teach meditation to them and help reduce crime? Is this explored? Is this arena explored at all?
Yeah, so there is certainly some research going on, especially in clients with unfortunate circumstances, like in juvenile hall or other kinds of facilities where they are. And what we have learned is actually mindfulness is just a way of life. It's a lifestyle change, and you are trying to practice that in everything you're doing. And so for incarcerated youth or people who are have maybe gone through adverse circumstances, which is what has led to crime in their life, and adverse consequences as a result of that, there has been certainly with newer research about inculcating compassion and kindness, and building more awareness and understanding about why I am here the way I am, and what could be changed to go back to where I need to be. There is certainly a lot of push there, and I'm not familiar with any studies, but I think that's been looked into, and maybe somebody's actually doing some work there.
Okay, Dr. Ruchi, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that there are a couple of things around how we look at a mindfulness practice, that there's already a way that we've lost a language of discussing our feelings, being in contact with what we're physically experiencing in our body, like emotions carry physical contraction patterns. When we aren't digesting our emotions, that we live in a kind of state of chronic overwhelm. A narcissism can somehow take hold, that we're seeing quite a bit of these days, where people are very reactive and outward, and this is part of the research field of why consciousness and mindfulness and mindful-based stress reduction strategies are becoming so popular and widely implemented, not just in medical research, but also in businesses, universities, and the prison system, because this is an ideal way to restore that sense of awareness of what's happening inside of us, and that when we lose that, we do become disembodied, and all kinds of crazy reactive behaviors take over. And so this simple thing that we've lost is like knowing what's happening in me, has a little bit been hijacked by the rapid pace of I think our human ambition these days to succeed, to strive, and for many people just to get by and make a living wage.
Okay, so great.
The
Thank you,
economic
Dr.
discrepancy that we're having now. So yeah, I think that these are really important strategies for us to kind of have a restoration.
Awesome. So there was a term which you used, it was called presencing. Do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah,
Presencing, it's a new term.
presencing,
Yeah.
presencing, yeah. Presencing is a word I think that we're going to hear much, much more of in mainstream culture in the coming years. It's already something that lives in the wisdom traditions to come into presence. I think in its most essential expression, presence is what happens when there's a coherence in my physical body, with my emotional body, with my mental body, with my conscience, my sense of what's right, what's wrong, and that I'm flowing in alignment with myself. And not that I'm just doing it in myself, but also in relation to those around us. And so
Yeah.
when we're in presence, we're actually stepping into our natural flow and rhythm. And then that's where clarity is born from. And so we're seeing like Otto Scherma out of the MIT has a whole presencing institute, which actually looks at how we can bring presence into how our social systems work, whether it's businesses or school. But that begins with actually something more granular, which is coming into presence with myself.
Yeah.
And then I'm actually starting a whole slew of presencing programs around helping women come into presence around chronic women's health issues, whether it's around a difficult birth, a miscarriage, menopause, that we can use the practice of presence to actually allow space so that people can begin to process their experiences in life. These things we don't have current time in our current kind of health system.
Okay, great. Dr. Lena, do you have any quick examples before we wrap up about presencing?
So I think to me, it's kind of an interchangeable term to being mindful in a way. I think it's
Yeah.
very much in alignment with that you are being in your present moment, and you're being in touch with your internal self, and not just with the your inner world, than just being with the outer world.
Yeah, this is a very strong initiative Stanford Medical School and Harvard Medical School are taking. They are talking a lot about this, especially for physician burnouts. So
Mm-hmm.
this term was used in a couple of talks I heard last 2 days. So I just recall that I saw it on your slides as well. So this is great. This is infiltrating into a lot of professions, including a medical profession, and definitely students can benefit. Or through the last 1 hour, we saw that working women have undergone transformation. Dr. Ruchi talked about women in pregnancy, menopause, postpartum. Everyone is benefiting from it. And Dr. Lena, your personal story has been very powerful. And I'm sure it's going to inspire a lot of South Asian women and immigrants to embrace these techniques. So please take a look at the websites, Dr. Lena and Dr. Ruchi. You can reach them on those addresses. Before we close out, one last announcement. Please register for the November 17th Fit and Fantastic event. I have included the link to that event in the chat box. The tickets are available for the first 20 registrants, I think 20% off. So please do take advantage of this. this was just a curtain raiser. On the day of the event, we're going a lot more in depth into women's health issues. They start with mental health and wellness, anger management, on the gynecological issues, and of course, mindfulness meditation will definitely be in the core of this event. So please come check us out. This event is going to be hosted in Palo Alto. And yeah, we'll have Dr. Leena and Dr. Ruchi again at the event. Thank you so much for your attendance. If there are any more questions, we have time for one last question. Anybody else? Any questions? If not, closing thoughts by Dr. Leena or Dr. Ruchi? Is there any? We have 2 more minutes left. So if you have
Well, I would just like to say thank you to ICC and Crack the Wellness Code for giving us this opportunity to reach the community and talk about something that I think can, if we can address this very conscientiously, that we can have a huge impact on our wellness and well-being. I invite people to come to my website. I write a monthly blog called Unveiling Being, and for people who just subscribe, I have a mindfulness practice that I call Course Correct, which will be sent to them for free to just support this practice and our topic this evening. So just invite for people who want to stay connected and get some more structure in their practice, please.
Yeah, I would like to also take this
And I
opportunity.
look forward to seeing you on November 17th.
Okay.
Sorry, Ruchi, I thought maybe we,
Yeah, it's a little glitchy.
yeah. So thank you to ICC and Crack the Wellness Code team for giving this wonderful opportunity. It is really very important need of the hour that we talk, and you know, I felt very comfortable sharing my personal story because even being a doctor and in a medical field, I got impacted with stress when I thought I knew everything. But you know, we do get carried away with our life demands and forget to take care of ourselves. So all the wonderful women joining at the webinar, please take care of yourself. Join us for more wonderful mindfulness practices and other amazing topics on November 17th. See you there. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so I just want to correct myself. There's 40% off with the WFW29 promo code for the November 17th event. I repeat, you get 40% off. You have to use WFW29 as the promo code. With that, I'd like to call this webinar to a close. Thank you all for your attendance and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Hi, Ruchi. Is it just
I
us?
think maybe we should leave in case the other, if it
Yeah.
still seems like it's open, but I'll call you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.